Hey guys, Chris here from Average Escape Reviews, and I'm back with another video. This time we're going to be looking at street wheels versus AT wheels. Now, if you've seen any of the other videos that I've shot, you guys have probably picked up on the fact that I'm not a fan of the AT wheels. Not that I'm doubting their performance, it's purely just because of the way they look. When you compare the look of the board, in my opinion, AT versus street with the 107 wheels, if it's a bamboo or if it's a carbon board like the one behind me over here, I just think it looks so much better with the street wheels on it. But all of that aside, I'm going to give you some feedback on how I found the experience of using the ATs. Now, unlike the other videos, we're not going to be doing this into categories because I just don't feel like this video needs that. I'm just going to be sharing a bit of insight into some of the differences between AT versus street. So now, being a really big fan of the street wheels, based off of the way that the board looks with them on, especially the 107s, the ride of them is great, especially if you're on smooth roads. But that's the key thing if you're on smooth roads. The 107s versus the 97s, without going into too much detail, I filmed a video on that, which I'll link down below if you want to see that, and I'll also try to get it to pop up on the screen somewhere. There's a big difference in the amount of vibrations and bumps that you feel when you switch from 97s to 107s, but you still do feel bumps. The AT wheels was something that I was never a fan of until I actually spent a few hours riding with them, especially when you're in less than desirable weather conditions, if it's a little bit kind of damp out, not wet, but just a little bit damp and hazy. My experience using the AT wheels has been, the only way I can phrase it is a little bit embarrassing, because I got on it, didn't like the height, didn't like the look, but after riding down a road that I have to ride down to get to my office, and I know exactly how it feels with all of the various boards that I've used, the second I went down that road with the AT wheels is kind of where everything kind of clicked into place. I couldn't believe how little I could feel. All of the bumps and the harsh vibrations that I got with either of the street wheel setups just didn't exist when I went down that road with the AT wheels. It felt like I was floating on a completely smooth surface, which was a massive, massive deal for me, and something that was really painful for me to admit. Riding on crap roads, going over bumps, potholes, uneven surfaces, with the AT wheels, you really don't have to worry about it. You don't have to kind of look at every piece of tarmac that you're riding over to try and avoid coming off of the board. Those wheels just chew through pretty much anything that you can throw at them, which gives you a lot of confidence to be able to just go out and enjoy your ride without having to freak out about ruining your board or coming off the board in the first place. Now, from there, it's going to be actually carving on those wheels. Now, of course, I'm still kind of getting to grips with how far I can push each of the wheels that I've used on the GTR boards before I slip out or before I lose control. But again, I always expected my experience, the way it feels, my personal preference was always carving on the street wheels. I messed around with the AT wheels when I first got my board, but really didn't enjoy it, so switched very quickly back to the street. But when I actually gave those wheels some time, the ATs that I'm talking about right now, I couldn't believe how much grip you had. I'm getting a little bit more confident with my carving with the 107s, to the point where when I'm in my carves, I can feel the back end of the board starting to slip out, and I kind of know where that limit is for the way that I skate. But with the ATs, I couldn't find it. I tried to push the board as far as I physically could with my carving skills as they are at the minute, and I just could not find the end of the grip that those tires had, which was unreal. Aside from that, I felt like I could carve deeper, wider, or even tighter if I needed to. The diversity of what those wheels offer in terms of what you can do, your maneuverability on different surfaces, has completely blown my mind. I never expected to actually be a fan of the AT wheels and come off of the street, but since switching to the ATs and in the process of filming this video, I thought that I'd go back to the 107s or the 97s, and I just don't see myself doing that. The AT wheels have essentially completely converted me. And while we're still on the topic of grip and carving and the general ride and performance of these wheels, I'm also going to mention what they're like in bad weather conditions. Now, I'd never advise or condone riding in the wet, but sometimes you get caught out, sometimes you need to, or sometimes the ground is a little damp. With the 107s or the 97s, those slick wheels, we all know what it's like. You literally have to go in a dead straight line. If you try and turn even the tiniest margin of error, and you know that back end of the board is going to spin out and you're going to lose control. But riding in hazy, damp and wet conditions with the AT wheels, even on various different surfaces, you just have so much grip, so much control in comparison to the previous wheels that I've used, which are the streets, which again was something I didn't expect to enjoy so much and have so much control over. So aside from being able to carve better, being able to ride over rough roads without having to worry about it and just enjoying your ride a lot more with the AT wheels, another massive benefit is the fact that you can ride on pretty much anything. Of course, there are these limits. You can't ride up the side of a volcano or something like that, but in terms of riding on grass, cobbled streets, just horrible surfaces, hills, those wheels chew through pretty much anything. It was really cool riding around Cambridge, being able to go on the cobbled roads, onto really messed up streets, just going off and on curbs, just having the versatility to ride across surfaces that I wouldn't even think about trying to ride on with the street wheels. That really won me over, and it's one of the main reasons why I'm finding it now really hard to switch back to the street wheels after being able to just shred over anything with the ATs. In terms of the range that you're able to get with the AT wheels, I will mention the setup that I was using, which was the 7-inch AT wheels with the 66 tooth gear setup, just in case anyone's wondering. The range that I was able to get on that setup was about 18 miles, bearing in mind I'm roughly 75 to 76 kilograms, and I probably had a bag on my back that was anywhere from 5 to 8 kilograms, depending on what was inside it. And when I compare that to what I was able to get with the street wheels, bear in mind the way that we were riding when we did this test was just absolutely thrashing the boards. We weren't trying to take it easy to maximize on range. We were going full speed up inclines and hills that we wouldn't normally even ride on to really push the boards to see what they'd be capable of doing. We even went to a skate park and we're going up essentially almost vert ramp type scenarios just to really burn through the battery of the boards to push them as far as we could to be able to get a realistic range. So if we're riding on an average day, this is what we can expect to get. So with the AT wheel setup on the Bamboo GTR, I was able to get about 18 miles. And when we compare that to the street wheels on the same board, I was able to get probably about 2 or 3 miles more than that. So there wasn't a massive difference in how much the range was chewed up when you compare the street to the AT. Now, in terms of the top speed that I was able to get out of the board on that exact same setup with the AT wheels was about 22 miles. Now, that doesn't sound great, and I'm not going to lie, that's probably one of the biggest hindrances with the board. Now, one of the scenarios that we had was Ricky was on the GTR Bamboo with 107 wheels with the 32 teeth gear setup, and he was able to just blow past me. If we were on a straight stretch, the speed wasn't comparable. He would turn back and I'd be ages behind him, which was incredibly frustrating. But what I did to try and combat this, which isn't advised and it's not something that Evolve will advise you to do, is having the 48 teeth gear set up with the AT wheels, the 7-inch wheels of course. What that essentially does is claw back that top speed. I was able to get about 25 miles an hour with the exact same things that I had on me in terms of the bag and the setup that I had on the board just by switching out the gears. Now, of course, that's probably going to be the ideal scenario. That's exactly how I would want those types of wheels to perform, and that's a top speed that I'd be happy with, which is much more comparable to what you'd expect to get out of the street wheels. But the drawback with that is you do get motor overheating issues after you've probably clocked just a couple of miles, and it's the reason that Evolve don't suggest this setup. I'd love to find a happy medium where I'm still able to get good top speed, but I don't have to worry about the overheating, of course, which isn't going to be great. But at the same time, there's always going to be a compromise when you change the setup. You can't expect to get the same acceleration that you'd get out of a street wheel and also the same top speed when you're increasing the size of the wheel and also adding an inner tube that requires air. All of these factors are going to have an impact on the way that the board is able to perform based on the setup that you have and the wheels that you put on it. Now, if you're fairly new to Evolve or you don't know too much about the different gear setups that they have, we are going to be making a video specifically looking at the different gear options and when you attach those to different wheels, what are the results of the different kind of setups that you can create. But aside from that, I have been talking about the subject of a happy medium. I've been testing the 6-inch AT wheels, which has the 48 teeth gear setup, so look out for that video coming soon because this is a much more of a happy medium where you're getting really good acceleration and a top speed of roughly about 25 miles an hour. So it's still not at the level of the street wheels, especially the 107s, but it's very, very close and a really good happy medium. Now, when we look at the acceleration with the AT wheels, because of the size of the wheel, it's a bigger diameter. Of course, you don't expect the acceleration to be as powerful or as quick or responsive as it would be with a much smaller diameter wheel. Now, this isn't something that's a massive downer, but it's just something that you do have to account for. If you've got the 97mm wheels or the 107mm wheels, the acceleration is going to be a little bit more aggressive when you compare that to the ATs. But again, it's not something that ruins your ride or your experience, but it's worth noting. And on the notion of top speed and range, it's definitely important to mention that you will notice a decrease in the speed of the board as you chew through the battery. So I did mention I was able to get roughly about 18 miles with the AT wheels, but the speed of the board, or the top speed rather, did drop down quite significantly as I was running through the battery's percentage and as I was increasing the amount of miles that I was covering. So it's definitely important to mention that. After the sort of first 20 or 30% of the battery's life, the board dropped down to a top speed of roughly about 18 miles, and you can expect it to get progressively slower as you chew through the battery life on the board. Now, in reverse, with the street board, as I was chewing through the battery's life, I was able to hit much closer to my top speed for a much bigger portion of the battery's life and the general performance of the board. So that's definitely worth noting that the street board seems to do a better job of being able to maintain as close to the top speed as it possibly can as you're chewing through the consumption of the battery. It's also important to note that with the AT wheels, they do have an inner tube, which means that you have to put air inside the wheels. Now, that's not really a massive downer, but it does mean that if you're going to be using the board a lot, you do need to monitor the pressure of the tires to make sure that they're not dropping below where they should be. And it also means that essentially it's like having a bike tire, 4 of them on a skateboard. So you also need to be cautious of going over various different things on the roads, like nails or very, very sharp glass. Because if anything like that does manage to get inside the tire, I'm not saying it's anything that's happened to us, but you do need to be cautious about the inner tube because it's something that could be punctured by debris that could be in the road. Whereas the street wheels, you don't really have to consider that. You do have to worry about chipping off chunks of the wheel, which again isn't something that we've experienced, but it's worth noting those two differences between these two wheel options that you can get. Now onto the points about braking. Despite the AT wheels being significantly bigger than the street wheels, the braking wasn't as drastically different as I thought it would be. Definitely not something that I would really notice brutally while I was stopping on the street or stopping at some lights or anything like that, which again was a bit surprising, but pleasantly surprising, so that's always a good thing. As always, thank you very much for watching this video all the way to the end. Please make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you like this video. And if you like the content that I create here, make sure that you subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of the videos that I post. Make sure the notification bell is turned on so you're notified anytime I post a new video. If you've got any suggestions of what you'd like us to shoot next, please leave your comments down below in the comment section. And if you want to see the 107s versus the 97 wheels, that video will be linked down below. Or if you want to see the carbon versus the bamboo GTR, linked below, as well as all of the other videos that I've created thus far. Thank you very much, guys. Like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.